Go.
Matt Brown, extra points. This is Christmas for him. He received his college football, EA Sports College Football on Friday. I just saw one of his tweets, personal news. I just threw a touchdown off a double halfback pass. EA Sports College Football 25 is here. Matt Brown, only one we'd want to have on to discuss this right off the top. Matt, thanks for your time. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoke, David Smoke. Is it everything you thought it was going to be?
Gentlemen, first of all, thanks for having me. It still is a little bit surreal after being so deep in this beat for the last 3 years, right? I didn't expect this to dominate so much of my professional life over a little while. So you worry, is it going to be anticlimactic when this is over? And then you get the sticks in your hands and you see the thing that you've been writing about and you see your name in the credits and you see your alma mater. And it's a little emotional, not just because it feels like the finale of this very long journey. It's not a perfect video game, but it is definitely a very fun one, and one that I'm very confident college football fans will really deeply enjoy.
Now, take us through the last 72 hours. You told me on the phone that you had to remind yourself to get up and go exercise. Have you showered and bathed regularly? What's your family think?
Yeah, gentlemen, I don't mind saying this. I'm actually pretty proud of myself here that I think I've done a fairly decent job of continuing to cosplay as a functional human being. It's funny because I didn't actually know I was going to get the game on Friday until 8 o'clock. I get a text from a staffer that I know over at EA. It was just like, oh, well, if you want the game, you will have a code ready for you in 10 minutes to go make arrangements. But I'm a husband. I'm a dad. I had other plans that weekend. I had lawn care responsibilities and other things. So I had to stagger that stuff out, knowing I couldn't just drop heaven and earth. I'm not at a place in my life where I can play this for 12 hours in one sitting. It's it's 90 minutes here, 90 minutes there, having to tell my children, I'm sorry, I got to take over the television. This is for work. It doesn't look like it's for work. Daddy's yelling like it's not for work, but it really is for work because, I have a formal review of this game. I have to file a copy for it by tomorrow. I have a couple of other editorial responsibilities. So it's been a whirlwind, but a very fun one.
So, Matt, when this was first announced as returning, it's been a whirlwind. I guess you'd use that term there as well. And you've been all over it and riding that whirlwind. And you had the thousands of questions in your mentions and emails and all of that. You've delivered a lot of information. But just watching the buildup of this game over the last few months, I think we all understood that there was a piece missing in video game fandom with no college football video game. But now, man, the game's barely even out. There's content creators that are hundreds of thousands of views and just crazy new followers and just the energy around this game. What are kind of the expectations do you gather from the EA side on how successful they expect this to be? And has some of the fervor maybe even already surpassed what they thought, even knowing the hole that was left with no college football video game?
The way that you described it there at the end of surpassing expectations is exactly what I have heard on the EA side. Going back about a year ago, when I would talk to some financial analysts, the people that would track this stock, or when I would talk to people on deep background of the company, everybody would say, we're confident this is going to be a commercially successful game, but they were the projections were relatively conservative. And I think we talked about it on this program, right? This is not going to outsell Madden. This it might not even sell 2 million copies. It's going to be a $200 million, $170 million game. That's just fine. That would be a success, right? And what I've heard, over the last couple of days is based on the pre-sale data, based on some of the response on social media, based on what they're seeing from very early returns, it's going to do better than that. And their conservative projections have been surpassed. So I'm not saying that this is going to outsell Madden. I still don't believe that's the case here. But this, especially given the time of the year when there's not a ton of other major AAA releases, I think they have a hit. Even as the tenor on social media might change in a couple of weeks, when people, the nostalgia kind of fades from their eyes and they begin to see some of the warts in the whole thing, it's going to sell very, very well.
Do you think because it's been such an exhausting wait that also leads to the interest now?
Oh, I'm sure that's part of it. It's been a long time. And college football as a sport has changed so much since then. The gaming has changed so much since then. I think we've talked about it before too. I legitimately think a portion of the passion buildup here isn't just because people miss the game. I think there's a little bit of a sense of nostalgia among people of a certain age, that wanting to go back and feel for a couple of hours like they did when they were 21, or they did when they didn't have as many responsibilities. And that this game subconsciously is a mechanism for that. So you have all those things, but college football as an entity has not become less popular since 2014. If anything, it's only become more popular, and this is the vehicle for more and more people to be engaged with that sport.
Matt, what would you say? Like you said, it's not perfect. What are there like little warnings without, obviously, disparaging the game that you can tell people to look out for?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, look, it's the game is like, it came out to early release people like 20 minutes ago. Mm-hmm. There's almost certainly going to be a patch on Friday. And there's going to be additional updates over the coming weeks, even before the season actually starts. One of the things that a lot of people have noticed, I think some Baylor fans will notice this, and I've seen this from a couple other places, is that while there's been a lot of attention to detail to try to replicate uniforms and stadiums and campus traditions as much as possible, it's not perfect. And people will be able to see, maybe we're missing a building here, or this renovation happened last year and we thought it was going to be in the game and it isn't. I don't think I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. The number of uniforms that are in the game that I am seeing now was less than the uniforms that I saw when I played a beta version back in May, which makes me think either some are coming out later, or there might be a DLC pack or something else. So that is something where I've heard a couple of fans raise some questions. I've noticed a couple of small bugs in the Ultimate Team mode. Right now, the game presentation says that every player is from Alabama, which I imagine is going to get patched pretty soon. Look, it has like the home city correct, but the state always says Alabama. But it's little things, right? The game itself is still very playable and very enjoyable.
What conference are Florida State and Clemson in your version of the video game?
Man, I have not. I'll be transparent. Of the 15 hours or so that I've spent in this game, I've only spent about 2 in Dynasty. I haven't messed around with realignment all that much. And the teams that I'm playing with are like Akron and Utah State at the very beginning. So like whatever Clemson's doing, that's in a completely different universe from my world. But I'm excited to see what other, community people do for their, I've seen some people bring it back the Southwest Conference. I've seen a lot of people talking about rebuilding the Pac-2. I'll be excited to see what people come up with.
Yeah. Now, so when you say, for those like me, when you say Dynasty compared to whatever else, explain that for the ones like me who don't play it.
Sure. So there's several different modes in the game, and one of the most popular among the community for this is called Dynasty Mode, where you create a coach, and you can decide what kind of coach you want to be. Do you want to be a coach that focuses on being a master motivator, or a great schematic technician who might give his team bonuses during the game? You want to be an elite recruiter. Fill out your staff and you take over a program. And a lot of people like to then take over really small schools like Sam Houston State or Akron or Old Dominion, and somehow turn them into a 5-star recruiting superpower. Or you might start a career with one of those schools and then bail the first time you can to go to a higher profile job. That's very popular. It's not the only mode. You can play through the career of an athlete in a mode called Road to Glory. They have online competition modes, and they have a card collecting mode where you can build your own ultimate team out of other players or historic greats and compete online or against the computer.
Smokey, you ready to buy yours yet?
No. No, I mean this with all due respect to the game. I know I can tell how popular it is. I'm sure a lot of people, all of you in this room, will have a great time with it. Matt, of course. I don't think I could keep that. I don't think I could stay focused enough and enough time to learn it, to enjoy it. And if I can't do that, then I can't play it. You hear that from anybody at all, Matt?
I'm sorry?
You hearing that from anybody at all that's like afraid of it?
I do. And I wrote about this a little bit here today, and I have a lot of empathy for that, because I've been telling people that, there's a whole bunch of folks on YouTube that are very popular because they're competitive elite players of this game. And I am not that guy. I have learned about this as a reporter, but if I was to play against a random Joe on the street, I'd probably lose. I don't have the time or the patience to master the stick skills for anything here. And when I'm playing, I'm not playing on the highest difficulty level. I am what I believe the kids these days would call a casual. And if that's the way that you want to play, there's ways to do that. There's even some people that will get this game and basically never play at all. All they'll do is handle the recruiting and the roster management and the custom schedules. They'll basically be playing like an athletic director, and they'll let the computer simulate all the games. But I have empathy. If you're somebody that's like, I could figure out Tecmo Bowl, I can figure out Bill Walsh college football. But once you move to 3D and once the manual for figuring out the controls is 6 pages deep, I understand that's not for everybody. That's completely okay.
Matt Brown with us on 365 Sports.
What is the best team you've played with so far as like your ability to go through it, and what's the most challenging?
That is a good question. I don't mind sharing this, right? When I was first starting a dynasty, and again, you typically pick a lower rated team. And I remember thinking, I know a lot about football. I've been playing this game for a long time. I'm probably very well versed in how the blood and guts of the system work. I bet if I fire up a game with Akron and I play against just a regular OG5 team, I bet I could probably still win. I fired up a game against Hawaii, and I just got destroyed. I think I lost by 40. I was blown up at the line of scrimmage on every single play. I'm sure that like real life Akron is not the worst team in college football, and that they have plenty of guys who can play very well. I don't know if it's the playbook or me just being an idiot or what. I wasn't going up against Georgia's defensive front, but I was just demolished. I went to Ohio State. I grew up in Columbus. I've spent a little bit of time playing with that team, and as you might expect, that's a team that translates really well to video games. I think a lot of people are going to also have a lot of fun playing with Ole Miss and Oregon this year. But I will say, like the real legitimately fun thing that I've already noticed is that there really are a lot of different ways to play. There's like a jillion different playbooks, and how your roster and your team align with the kind of offense and defense you want to run matters a lot. Right? If you take Michigan's roster and throw in the veer and shoot, it's going to look pretty ugly. But you can take a team that's way worse, but is built to play football that kind of way, and you can make life deeply uncomfortable for everybody else, which I think is very realistic, because that's how you see upsets, and that's how you see teams that don't have 5-star talent win a lot of football games. And you can do that with the video game this year, no doubt about it.
Matt, I know that you've been spending a good portion of your time on covering the video game and all that. Glad to see that it's starting to get out there, and look forward to seeing all the content that comes from that. Have you had much time to really, or do you typically pay a whole lot of attention to media days? Obviously, the Big 12 last week had the Pac-2 had their soiree that one of those nights. Got the SEC starting today. Anything popped out of interest to you? Kind of how do you generally view media days?
Earlier in my career, this was something that I paid a lot more attention to, and I do it a little bit less now, not because it's not important, but just because it's generally less aligned with my beat. So one of the biggest things I noticed is something that probably isn't a big deal to other people in this footprint, was the idea of the Big 12 kind of pivoting away from their initial plans for Mexico about playing, football and men's basketball games. Now I believe it's women's soccer and maybe some other ones. Baseball, and I have been actually talking to baseball. Yeah. I have been talking to a couple of other ADs and associate ADs in the league about this before, because I'm finishing up a story right now about Latino outreach, what that looks like in many different programs. And what I was hearing before that announcement was a lot of schools in the conference were excited about the idea intellectually until they sat down and realized, oh my gosh, am I going to have to give up a conference home game? How are we going to go get passports for all of our players? How are we going to make the finance for all this work? What does this change for my insurance? And suddenly it became much more technically difficult than they thought it was, even though I think there's a lot of teams in this league that they met in Mexico City could sell the place out. So it was a good idea. I'm not surprised that they're maybe shifting to something a little bit less ambitious. I hope that, if not as a conference, I hope some more schools in this league look at finding ways to maybe build bridges to their Spanish-speaking neighbors as not just a nice thing to do as for higher education, but something that makes sense for their athletic department too.
Last thing, that because everyone is so enthralled with realignment, that there was a report by a pretty respectable writer in Jason Shear out of Arizona about internal belief within the Big 12 about FSU and Clemson. Now, it also goes on to say you have to do A, B, C, D, and E, or A, B, C, D, and E have to happen. Your thoughts about even that idea?
My thoughts are at this point is what happens and on what timeline for Clemson, Florida State, for that matter, North Carolina, and probably a couple other schools in the ACC is unique because it's not up to television executives, really. It's not up to university presidents, certainly not up to ADs or conference commissioners. It's going to be up to the legal system unless somebody decides to come up with a truly outrageous amount of money to simply buy all of these things here out. Now, one thing I've learned about writing about the law and college sports over the last 4 years is in court, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, which means that it can be hard to project exactly how everything goes down. But these kind of cases, particularly over this much money and over across multiple states, tend to take a little while. So I would be a little bit surprised if there is a final resolution to ACC's realignment over the next 3 months. Not to say that it's impossible, but I tend to look at this as a longer timeline, especially with so many other massive uncertainties in college athletics right now. What I've been hearing at the low major level is that has created an environment to make realignment take longer or be a little bit less likely in the short term. We'll see if that comes into play here with the ACC. I'm not expecting significant moves in the immediate future there.
Great stuff, Matt. Always love having you on the show. Enjoy the game. I know you are.
How relieved are you to just not have to field any more questions about certain details of the game?
Well, fellas, you and I both know they're not going to stop, right? They're just going to think of something else. But here's the thing, right? On Thursday morning, I get on an airplane and I go on vacation. And I'm going to go someplace where my cell phone doesn't work, and it's going to be glorious. And when we come back, we'll see if Reddit still wants to know about pixelated shadows or something else, or if we move on. I am deeply thankful for the attention and for the interest from so many people. But I am also very excited for people to leave me alone a little bit for stuff that I cannot control.
I bet. Get some sleep if you can. Thanks for your time, Matt, and the insight because it's right there in your hands. He's already started playing the game since Friday.